thing about this fly that I like the bead looks like an eye on it. So I'm going to put the bead on the hook first. And then I'm going to start tying with 2 bobbins. Now, if any of you've got my DVD and you've seen me tie at shows and stuff, when I tie zonkers and zonker type flies, I always use 2 bobbins. And I learned that from Dan Byford when he taught me how to tie this years and years ago. But I'm going to start out by taking a red thread, but you can use any color you want. I'm just going to put it on the back of the hook. And actually, I'd rather you not tie until I get it all done. Okay. And what we'll do is I'll tie one, get it completely finished so you know what's going to happen and you won't get ahead and make mistakes that we can't correct. And then we'll tie another one together. So I'll tie each fly twice. So I'll start out by putting red thread, just putting on the back of the bobbin, or the fly. And then I'll take my olive thread and attach it to the hook. And I'll use this for dubbing my body and the rest of the tying function. Now, I told you just to get some olive ice dub. What we're actually using ourselves on this fly, if you can, I don't know if you can see that. This is a different, it's got a blend of 2 colors. We buy a olive ice dub and we mix it with a brown UV ice dub. And I didn't want to tell you to do that because it's so hard to blend them, but I'll tell you now, the best color is ice dub olive blended 1 package with 1 package of brown UV. And that's what I'm going to use for the body. Now, one of the things I found in our classes when we use ice dub, a lot of the guys, it's so easy to dub, they build the bodies up fast and they get them on there real easy. And then they fish the fly, and the first fish or 2, the body comes apart on them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this in 3 or 4 different sections. I'll start by keeping it tight. And I'll use my finger to catch it as I go around so that it really tightens it up. And I'm going to try to make kind of a tapered body like a minnow would have. And I'm going to take it in 2 or 3 batches. So I'll just do the same thing again. Add another little bit of dubbing to the thread. And I'm going to come up to till I'm about a beads and a half width back from the eye of the hook to build the body up. Okay, one more time and I should have it. Now, the reason I do it this way is I don't want this fly falling apart, because I guarantee you'll catch a lot of fish on it. And I noticed, John, when you come out to Bountiful, that you had a fly similar to this. It's been so deadly for us in Canada, but it's worked all over in Idaho and Crittenden and every place else. Okay, now I tied the body up. Now I'm going to take this bead and I'm going to push back against it so that I get about a bead, little more than a bead's width up to the front. I'm going to push it really hard and then just pull it out of the way, and then I'm going to take my red dubbing. And if you've got ice dub, that's fine. I'm going to use a little bit of seal on my own. I've blended with some sparkle stuff, so I just get a thin layer of red. Okay, then I'm going to bring that right up against the body. This is going to represent the gills. Now, I've heard this for years, that the fish take it for, you know, bleeding gills or whatever. I don't know if that's true or not, but I put it on here and it seems to work. So, okay, then I push that back. And if I got enough room, then I just come up and I'll whip finish right there. And then I'll cut my thread and go to the front of the bead. I'll push that bead back as far as I can and I'll force it back with the thread. As soon as I get it held in place, I'll trim that top part of this stuff if I can see it. I found if I put my finger wherever I'm doing stuff, I can usually, a lot of the guys in the club used to tease me because if I didn't do that, I'd be here and the thread would be down here and I'd think I was on it and I was always missing it. So, okay, then you take your, either your squirrel or your rabbit strip. I've taken it right in front of the bead. Tie that down. And you'll notice that that makes it look like an eye on the front of this fly. When it goes through the water, it looks like a big eye there, and so the bead actually represents something. So I build it up tight against the bead and force that bead back tight against the body and gills. I whip finish that. Cut my thread. Then when I used to tie for blue ribbon, I used to tie, well, they'd order them 80 dozen at a time of these types of flies. And I always kept a thing of water there, but when you don't have a lot to do, you just wet your finger a bit like that. And then I just take my bodkin and I stretch the material. And I stretch it, find the point where the body ends, and I just bring my thread in and give it about 8 or 10 wraps. And we'll whip finish it right there with about 4 turns. Then you take your scissors, and I come back 1 gap width behind the butt of the hook and just slice that off, and I'm all set to go for my next one.
That's interesting. I just didn't have the words as.
Now, this fly you're going to need strong thread.
GSP? Yeah.
GSP, I like Kevlar, but GSP or Kevlar, or if you don't have any strong thread, I brought a few spools of size B if anybody needs it. You're going to need, you don't need it, but I'm going to recommend you use a little bit of crazy glue. If any of you don't have crazy glue, I brought some extra.
Bill's looking for one. Bill, we got one.
We got it. What's that?
Lance has got one.
GSP is the gel spun.
Yeah, gel spun.
They're here somewhere.
If you can break that.
This is the one where you're going to need calf tail, deer hair. Yeah, does anybody have razor blades?
Yes.
Because if you don't, I got extra ones here.
Is it because this fly's gonna lead us to suicide, or?
It could.
You tie it in the jail and the fish commit suicide.
We're going to pass out the razor blades if they need them?
Well, only if they need them. They won't need it yet.
Okay.
Okay, now guys, on this fly, I'm going to tie it before you do, and this one especially, because when it comes to working with deer hair, most people really have a problem with it, and yet it's a very simple thing to do. It is real easy to do if you follow the steps. The only problem I have with anything to do with deer is the fact that I have no depth perception anymore, and I have more of a hard time getting my cuts where I want them. Sometimes I'll go to cut and it's totally where it should be. So, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out coming back about 1/3 of the way back on the hook shank, and I'm going to start my thread right there. And the reason I'm doing that is just so that I'll know where my head's going to be when I tie this fly. If you get thread or anything up in there too soon, you'll end up covering up and you won't have enough room for the head that you're going to put on it. You're going to need some, on this particular fly, we're going to use yellow marabou, and I know I've got 2 different kinds of marabou here for 2 different flies, and it's so hard to find decent marabou anymore. You may have to work with it, but if I'm tying like leeches and stuff, I'll never use a whole feather for a tail. If I'm tying a streamer or a minnow or something, sometimes I use 2 feathers for a tail because they're representing different things. I want my leeches to be real skinny, and I want them to be able to move in the water, where a fish has a bulky shape, and I want to keep that shape. So I might use 2 feathers like this. On this one, I think I can get by with 1. But I'm going to make this tail on this fly about the length of the hook. And I'm going to tie it in right at the back. Then I'm going to come forward, and I'm not going to go past that place where I started my thread. So when I get close to it, I just twist up that marabou and cut it off. And then bring my thread to that starting point, and then I go back over it. All the way to right above the barb. And cinch it down tight. Now, the next thing, I'm going to add my body material, which, where did I put it? I thought I had it out just a second ago. There it is. See, told you I was blind. Okay, now the body. This fly originally had a body of braid. It just recently went to a crystal chenille. But the thing you have to watch when you tie in this body is that you cover the fly up, or the body area up completely with it. So when I start it here, I'll make a couple wraps and make sure that I get it all the way back right up to where that tail starts. Then I'm going to make about 3 or 4 wraps. Then I'm going to grab a hold of that body and pull on this so I tighten it up. If I try to tighten it that tight while I'm tying it, everything will roll over. So I make 3 or 4 more wraps. Grab it again, cinch it up, and do that all the way up to where I started my thread. Then I'm going to tie this off right there. I mean, it's an easy fly to tie, it's just you got to follow the steps. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take some calf tail. Now when you look at a calf tail, you've got mostly pretty straight hair, but some areas it starts getting curly. You want to stay away from the curly hair and use the straight. So right here I'm going to take a pretty good clump of it, like this. And then I'm going to take all the small hairs out of it. I'll grab it by the end and just get rid of all this longer stuff. So that really gets it down to where it's a lot less. And then I'm going to measure it from this tie-in point to 1/2 the tail length. Then I'm going to take the material and I'm going to cut it opposite from the way you usually cut when you were taught to do streamers. Instead of cutting it this way, I'm going to cut a 45 like this. The reason for that, most people when they tie streamer flies with this stuff, it always comes unraveled on them. They end up losing the wings. If I set this right down at the tying point and cinch that down and then tie out over the ends like this and then come back, that hair is not going to go anyplace and it's there to stay. Now this is, if you need crazy glue, this would be the place to use it. Now I don't probably need it, but I always use it because of the torque and stuff I'm going to put on the deer hair when I put it in. So I just put a little bit of that on. And then you take the mallard feather that you should have, the mallard dyed wood duck. Now the thing you look for in a mallard feather is you want a feather that has a straight stem. Now by straight stem, I mean a stem that goes straight this way, not that curves off to the side. You don't care if the feather's bent, but you got to have a feather that has a straight stem. Now if you look at these, you see how straight the stem is on both of these? It goes straight like that. Okay, I'm going to tie this feather in right on top of that calf tail. Now the only purpose that calf tail has in this fly is to keep this feather from wrapping around the hook. That's why I don't have to use a lot of it. So I'm going to lay this feather right on top, and I have it come to the end of the tail, and I want that straight part to go right down the hook. So I'm going to tie it in real loose to begin with. See that I can get it straight. Once I get it straight, then I'll cinch down on it. Now, if I was going to tie a bunch of these flies, I'd stop right now and do 3 or 4 or 5 more bodies just like this. Now I'm going to go ahead and start applying deer hair. Now, the deer hair is applied on these a lot different than you do if you're tying muddler minnows and stuff. I'm going to start out by taking a generous clump, which is probably half again as big as a pencil. And I'm going to get all the crap out of it. So if you're using one of these little plastic combs, just use the back of it. Don't use out here, you'll break off all the teeth. And I'm going to get all this stuff out of there. And you notice there isn't an awful lot of fur in there because I really looked good for this deer hair when I bought it. And I bought deer hair that didn't have a lot of junk in it. Okay, so I get rid of that. Then I'm going to take this hair and stack it. You notice that's a big clump. Guess I can just do it on here. I don't think I'm ruining their table. Just do it on my knee. Okay, when I get it stacked, I'll take that whole clump of deer hair out and measure against the hook. Now I didn't stack up as good as it should, so I'll do it again. It's better to do it twice and get it right. Okay. I take the deer hair. Oh, I got some more bad ends in there. So I'll stack it again. Anyway. Do that till it comes about to the center of the hook. Then I'm going to take that whole clump and I'm going to cut all those butts off. Okay? Then I'm going to hold this right here at the tie down point, and I'm going to make a loose wrap, a tighter wrap, and then tight. Pull it towards me, tight. Now I let go of it and I just come in here with my finger and I do flat on top to spread that out. The whole key to this fly is what I just did. This is what gives it the shape and makes it give the action in the water. Now I'm going to spin the head in front of it. If you use these ends, if you use that to spin part of the head, you end up always getting a big gap between the head and the back, and I don't want that. So the next thing I'm going to do is take another clump about the same size as that one. This time I'm not going to stack it. I'm just going to get all the junk out of it. And this one I'm going to spin. Get rid of the junk. Hold the fibers in my fingers, get the ends off of both ends. And then I come right straight on top of the hook. And I do just like I did on the collar. I do a loose, a tighter, and a tight. Pull it straight towards me. Then I want to get all this stuff back and bring my thread to the front. So what I do is I take now you don't want to pack this tight like you would a bass bug. I don't want this fly to float. I want it to, when it's in the water, I want it to dive, and then I want it to come up, and it does this. It quivers. You watch some of these in the water, right? You see why it drives the fish crazy. So anyway, I'm just going to take and push this back enough that I get it compact. I'm not going to make it really tight like I would a bass bug. So bring my thread to the front. I've got room for one more clump. Yeah, we tie a much bigger head than the ones you'll buy at the store, and I'll explain that in a minute, how we do it. And we talked with Kelly Gallup. He's the inventor of this fly, and he told us that the big head's a big thing, and he says there's guys now using these flies for striped bass in the ocean.
Can't they swallow them all?
I've had 3 fish so far that have taken this fly so deep, all you can see is the head right at the top of their throat. So you just have to cut it and let them go. And I'm talking about 26, 27-inch rainbows. Okay, now this next time when I put this next patch of hair on, I don't go straight like I did on the last one. I come at an angle. And the reason you come at an angle is so that you don't catch any of the hair that's already down. And I'll make 2 tight clumps, and then I'll just spin it. Like that. Bring my thread through, find the eye of the hook, and just get enough room there that I can do a whip finish on it. Okay, then I cut my thread. Okay, I'm going to turn the fly completely over. Now I'm going to take a straight edge razor blade. Now you can buy, I'll show you here in a second, straight edge. You can buy tools. Here's a tool that you can put a straight edge in, and it holds that for you. So if you're afraid of getting cut, you might want to buy something like this. But what you do, first thing I do is I take the straight edge and I go right on the bottom, and I cut everything off the bottom in a straight line, like that. Okay? Now the flies that you buy in the store have a smaller head down here and then a big collar that lays flat. We found that they don't catch fish nearly as well as if you have a big head on it. You don't get the action, you don't get the water movement, and you don't get the fly balanced in the water the same. So what I do now, I just take this and I just bend it like this, and I come from the point of the hook, I go this way, I come over this side, do the same thing over here, and then I just do a little bit right on the top, and then I go to my scissors. So I take everything out of the hook, or out of the vise. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come down at that same angle all the way around the top. I come in from the side. Like I said, this is the hardest thing for me to do because I have to put my finger or something there to make, I don't dare cut until I know I'm in the right place. Okay, then I put it back in the vise. I can see to get it in there. Okay, now I'll just even it up a little bit. You could probably fish with this just like it is, but I like to do a little more. I start coming in across the top like this, and I just follow this around. Just separating that head part from the collar. And if you want to, if you can't get in there good with your scissors, you can just take your blade, you can just come in like this and just hit that. Now this is like having a bad sore. If you keep picking on it, it'll never heal. So you got to decide when enough's enough, and I think this is fishable right now. So I'll just take it out and make one last check. And I find that usually that I'll have cut something off that I shouldn't have. But you know what? I found that it doesn't hurt. It still catches fish.
Mention a dead cat. Neighbor's dead cat.
Now these flies sell for about $4 or more in the store.
Where do you primarily fish this? Is this still water?
Oh, you could. This is a river. This was
fly.
invented for rivers.
But
I'd use this on the Provo, and I'd go to the lower Provo. I wouldn't go to the. You know, the reason why is because big fish like big things, and this was really brought home to us by one of the guys. How many of you remember Dennis Brackey?
Yeah.
Dennis Brackey and his buddy Gene Russin went up to Strawberry just before Dennis died from cancer. And they fished some big yellow flies made out of some seal that we'd got, and they got down on the bottom, and they both caught a couple cutthroats that were about 28 inches or bigger, and they were just fat, like over 10 pounds. And Gene took his home and he gutted it and took a 14-inch rainbow out of its belly. When these pick that piece of leader and we're going to snell it. So what I do is I take the leader, I run it through the eye of the hook if I can. Sometimes it takes me a while.
Are we watching again?
Yeah.
Watch, don't tie.
I wind it through the eye of the hook like this. Then I grab it at the back of the hook and hold it up against the hook, and I just bring this piece up to the front and I wrap 3, 4, 5, 6 times, and then I bring it through that loop that I made by when I turned that back. So I run it through there. Then I take this front one and I pull it tight, pull the back one tight, and there's a snelled hook. Now the reason you want a hook snelled is it'll keep the hook straight. If you just tied a leader to that and you put it out as a stinger hook, it could get bent out to the side and everything instead of staying straight out. A snell will keep it straight out. Now on the fly that I'm going to show you, if you want to use different size hooks at different times, then you won't even make a snelled hook. You'll just take a piece of braided, 20-pound braided spinning line, and you'll just make a loop and hang it out the back of the fly, and then you just run it through the eye of your hook and then run the hook on, and you got whatever size hook you want back there. So anyway, the first thing we'll do is we'll do that. Then the next thing, we'll take the 2461, take the barb off. That's your black hook. That's a size 2. I make these in 2s, 1s, and 1/0. Okay, now I'm going to take some, this is gel spun thread. I'm going to start right at the front, and I'm going to wind all the way back to the point. The point, not the barb. Remember, the point. We're working with the point of the hook now. Okay. Then I'm going to take a little super glue and put on there because I don't like the slipperiness of gel spun thread. I want to make sure this fly stays the way I put it. Okay, now I'm going to bring the thread back up to the front. I'm going to take whatever I decided on for my body material. I'm going to tie it in right at the front. So I come up like this. Then I bring my thread back like this, and I just wind right from the eye, just build up a body. And I stop at the point. That body stops at the point. And the reason I emphasize that, if you don't get it that way, you're not going to get a fly that does what it's supposed to. Okay, now I've got it to the point. Then I'm going to take that piece of foam that you were given. I don't even have one out for myself yet. Now you can buy these in kits at different places, or you can get them direct from Larry Tullis, or you can make your own. But you don't use the kind of foam you buy in the hobby shops and stuff. It's not stiff enough. This is the kind of foam they make sandals and stuff out of. And he cuts these out on band saws, and he cuts a block, and he cuts them, and then cuts it at an angle like that. So
Put it a little lower so it's the camera.
Oh, okay,
There you
I'm
go,
sorry.
there you go.
They're all cut on a band saw. Okay? You use different sizes for different size hooks. If I was using a 1/0 hook, I've got a bigger, wider one to use. Now, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my bodkin, and I'm going to measure the gap of the hook. Now, I like to go usually just a little more than the gap, and I measure it like that. Then I come to the top of this piece of foam with that tapered side underneath, and I get that measurement right on top. And that's where I'm going to punch a hole. But I'm going to punch a hole at a 45-degree angle, coming this way. Does that make sense?
Bring it down a little bit, it's not on the screen.
Okay, I'm gonna punch that hole at a 45-degree angle like this. The same but practical angle as that is at the lip. But I gotta make sure it comes out at the center. So I turn it over, just get my needle back in there, turn it over, and I try to come out right exactly in the center. If it isn't in the center, then I'll go back and redo it. You see how that goes? Now, you can use a nail or something to do this, but you need to make that hole a little bigger. So I just take my bodkin and I just do that to it. Okay, then I take this and I come up to the eye of the hook and I take that hole from the back and I slide that through until that eye of that hook comes out like that. Then I just get that out of the road because, boy, I tell you, these flies, fish will hit them. Okay, I put a little super glue right at the front, and I know Larry, when he makes them, he just does the front and back, but I like to do it all the way along the body. Little super glue. I bring this back around and I line it straight up on the top of the hook, and I come around and I make a looser turn and start to pull it, and then get tighter and tighter. And then I come back towards the bend like this until I've got a little shelf in there. But it starts right at the point of the hook. Okay, now after I get that in, get that lined up, everything's straight, I bring my scissors right against the butt of the hook and cut that off. Now save that. Boy, if you ever make any boobies or anything with them, these make great eyes on them. Okay, so the next thing I do is I take my scissors and I take this piece of foam and I push down on it like this, and I cut a little groove in it like that. Now, if you're not going to use a stinger hook, you just set your marabou in there. With a stinger hook, what I like to do is I like to set the hook right in there. So I measure that the way I want it. Let's see, I want it to be, I got too much here, so I'll just remove all that. I'm going to set it, about right there like that. Then I'm going to lightly go over it because this monofilament will roll on you. So I want to get it in place before I put any tension. And I cinch it down. And then I take this front part and I loop it. Bring that over the top. Just slide that through till I've got it wrapped down going two ways.
What if you wrap that around where you tied it in and then looped it? Does that make it more secure?
I doubt it. Okay. Now the next thing I'm going to do is take some of the marabou, and it's so hard to find decent marabou, but I got some here that'll work. I've got the best black and olive and brown marabou you can buy, but I bought pounds of it at a time when I could get it. And I've got strung marabou that's this long with big long fibers on it. Well, you try to buy that kind of stuff anymore and you can't find it anyplace. Now I want this marabou to be about the length of the fly, so I cut it off. And then because I got so much stuff going back there, I take the butts of this marabou and I pull out all of this fuzz. So I don't want it to take up so much space. So I get all of this out and I tie it down right, the first one right in the center like that. Okay, I'll do about 2 of those, like I said, not enough on that one feather. So I'll do about 2 of these, and then I'm going to put sparkle on it. Now these flies, if you've got my books, in my second book I've got one of these in there. I got doll eyes and everything on it. You can really doll them up, or you can use t-shirt paint and put eyes on them, but I found out that the eyes don't make any difference.
They
So
come off after the first fish.
No, they don't come off very often, but I'll tell you what, that if I'm making them to sell, I'll put eyes on. Because, you know, makes it worth the money they pay, but for fishing myself, I don't put them on.
They don't hold up on a washing machine.
Right, I made one of these for Rick. I gave it to him and he was at work and he put it in his smock and forgot where it was and went through the washing machine. He couldn't understand why the hook wouldn't stay straight out. Okay, now I'm gonna take some crystal flash. And I don't think it really matters what color you use. In fact, for a long time, I didn't think it mattered even if you used it, because I still caught fish. But Larry Tullis says he's noticed a difference, whether there's flash on there or not. He catches more fish with the flash, so just put a little bit of flash on there. Just catch that right there. One thing I didn't do that I usually do when I first put that monofilament on, I usually put a little super glue, and I didn't this time. But you should put some super glue right over the top of it just to make it reinforced. Okay, then you cover this up. Now for fishing, I'd stop right now. For selling, I want to get most of this stuff down. Of course, I'm not selling flies. I tied flies for...
Thread on your hook.
Huh?
You got a thread on your hook.
Okay, thank you. When I tied for blue ribbon, I used to tie over 1,000 dozen a year. And I've got to the point now where if I got to do it for money, it gives me the chills to think about it. Okay, then I'm taking whip finish this right there. Okay, then I'll put super glue on it. Now,